You're no good, heartbreaker. You're
my dad was not a person that had narrow-minded attitudes, and neither do I.
What was the terrible secret Aretha Franklin carried to her grave? She was a music legend, known for her powerful voice and hits like Respect and Natural Woman. But behind her success, she had struggles and personal pain that many people never knew about. What was she hiding? How did it affect her life and career? Let's uncover the truth about the secret Aretha Franklin died with.
And your dad was a minister?
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I was not.
Yeah,
I don't think one should be pushed into something that you don't really want to do. It could have been disastrous.
Yep.
Aretha Franklin's voice may be deeply familiar to millions, but her origin story is lesser known. Born on March 25, 1942, in Memphis, Tennessee, her parents were Barbara and Clarence Levin C.L. Franklin. Aretha's father, C.L. Franklin, was a famous Baptist minister and preacher. Her mother, Barbara, was a talented pianist and singer. When Aretha was just 2 years old, her family moved to Buffalo, New York, and later to Detroit, Michigan. It was in Detroit where C.L. Franklin became the pastor of the New Bethel Baptist Church. While Aretha's family seemed like a happy one from the outside, things were not perfect. When the singer-songwriter commissioned a memoir, 1999's From These Roots, it largely glossed over traumatic milestones in the performer's life, including the death of Aretha's mother when the singer was only 10, Aretha's pregnancy at 12 years old, her first marriage, and her alleged battles with alcohol. You'd never know from Franklin's account of her childhood, but the singer-songwriter's parents had a complicated marriage. Aretha's father, Reverend C.L. Franklin, was a nationally known Baptist preacher and civil rights activist who, in spite of his religious commitments, impregnated a teenager at his church, according to his biography, Singing in a Strange Land. Meanwhile, Aretha's mother, Barbara, became pregnant with another man's son, Aretha's half-brother, Vaughn. In 1948, when Aretha was 6, Barbara moved, taking Vaughn with her to Buffalo, New York, but leaving C.L. and her children with him behind. "We were all devastated," Aretha's sister Irma told Ritz. "My parents' relationship was stormy, and my father had a violent temper. I'd also be lying if I didn't admit that we certainly knew about my father's reputation as a ladies' man. We saw how women in church literally threw themselves at him. After I became older, I saw for myself that he availed himself of many of those women."
And you were very close with your dad.
Yes.
Terrible thing happened, right? There was a burglary, and he was
Yes.
shot?
Yes. He was comatose for 6 years.
In a 2018 interview with NPR's Terry Gross, Aretha talked about growing up around her father, C.L. Franklin, a preacher and a powerful figure in their community. Aretha said, "I never discussed it with him, and he never discussed that sort of thing with his children. But as children, we could see women showing a lot of interest in him." Her father was single at the time, and Aretha noticed women sitting in the front row during church services, wearing short skirts trying to get his attention.
Whatever your mental attitude is, has a lot to do with what you're going to be.
But life at home wasn't always easy for Aretha. Her parents separated when she was very young, and her mother, Barbara, moved away. While the family still visited Barbara, the separation deeply affected Aretha. Her brother Cecil wrote in the book Respect that the move broke Aretha's little heart. Her sister Carolyn added that Aretha was very close to their mother. Carolyn said, "After Mother left, I saw Aretha cry her eyes out for days." Aretha would pack her bag days before their visits to see her mother, eager to spend time with her. Tragedy struck again when Aretha was just 10 years old. Her mother died suddenly from a heart attack. Aretha later wrote about this painful time in her book, From These Roots, saying, "I cannot describe the pain, nor will I try." She remembered sitting and crying for a long time after her mother's funeral. Losing her mother at such a young age left Aretha deeply hurt. Her sister said, "She was a traumatized child. It's one thing to have your mother leave the house, but it's another to lose her forever without any warning." Aretha's father worried she might never recover. For weeks, she couldn't talk and became very withdrawn. It was music that eventually helped Aretha heal. Singing and performing gave her a way to express her feelings and find joy again. Without music, her family believed she might never have come out of her shell. Music didn't just heal Aretha, it made her the legend we all know and love today. Aretha Franklin had her first child, a boy named Clarence, just before she turned 13. She never said much about who the father was. Her brother Cecil, who also worked as her manager, once said the father was just a boy from school. Cecil explained that Aretha wasn't very interested in the boy, and the boy didn't seem to care much for her either. Aretha wrote in her book From These Roots that her pregnancy was normal. Cecil also said their father, C.L. Franklin, didn't get too upset when he found out. Instead of being angry, he talked to his children about the consequences of sex. He wanted them to understand what could happen. After Clarence was born, Aretha stopped going to school, but she didn't stay home to take care of the baby. Her grandmother stepped in to care for Clarence, while CL took Aretha on the road with his gospel group. Being on tour at such a young age was tough for Aretha. It forced her to grow up fast. She was only a child, but she was also a new mother and a girl surrounded by adults in emotional and sometimes inappropriate situations. According to writer David Ritz, Aretha once told him about visiting singer Sam Cooke's motel room when she was just 12. This shows how much she was exposed to adult experiences far too early in life. When Aretha was 14, she became pregnant again, eventually having a second son that she named Eddie. Like Clarence, Eddie was also given Aretha's last name and raised primarily by Aretha's grandmother. In her memoir, Aretha said her preacher father was fine with this pregnancy too, a point that Aretha's brother Cecil refuted to Ritz. It's enough to say he wasn't at all happy, and he made his unhappiness quite clear. In Respect, the pregnancies are handled vaguely. In an early scene, when Aretha is still a child, about 10 years old, a male family friend enters her bedroom at night and closes the door behind him. In a later scene, the adult Aretha has two sons. Tommy and Wilson told Vanity Fair that they were following Aretha's lead in terms of the vagueness around the paternity of her first son. The specificity of who impregnated her doesn't matter as much as what it did, in terms of trauma and children not being able to provide consent, said Wilson. Added Tommy, all victims of abuse should get to share their own stories of abuse on their own timeline and terms.
Like when he talks about his demons, you know, it's like damaged people. And as much as those demons were really his pain, you know what I mean? As he probably had some mama issues.
According to Ritz, Aretha first saw Ted White at a party inside her family's home in 1954 when she was 12. When the singer and single mother was in her late teens, she married White and appointed him as her manager in spite of her father's protestations. Etta James explained to Ritz, Ted was supposed to be the slickest pimp in Detroit. When I learned that Aretha married him, I wasn't surprised. A lot of the big-time singers who we idolized as girls had pimps for boyfriends and managers. Part of the lure of pimps was that they got us paid. They protected us. They also beat us up. In a 1968 cover story, Time portrayed Aretha as being a larger-than-life performer who could command any stage but who skulked behind the scenes. I've been hurt bad, the magazine cryptically quoted her as saying. The story continued. Last year, Aretha's husband, Ted White, roughed her up in public at Atlanta's Regency Hyatt House Hotel. It was not the first such incident. White, 37, a former dabbler in Detroit real estate and a street corner wheeler dealer, has come a long way since he married Aretha and took over the management of her career. Sighs Mahalia Jackson. I don't think she's happy. Somebody else is making her sing the blues. But Aretha says nothing, and others can only speculate on the significance of her singing lyrics like these.
You're no good, heartbreaker. You're like
I don't know why I let you do these things to me. My friends keep telling me that you ain't no good, but oh, they don't know that I'd leave you if I could. I ain't never loved a man the way that I love you. Franklin's brother Cecil told Ritz that White was a violent cat whose violence only got worse. I felt like Aretha was singing respect to Ted, but it hardly made any difference. He kept slapping her around and didn't care who saw him do it. You could compare the Aretha-Ted situation with Ike and Tina, Etta James told Ritz. Ike made Tina, no doubt about it. He developed her talent. He showed her what it meant to be a performer. He got her famous. Of course, Ted White was not a performer, but he was savvy about the world. As Aretha became more miserable in her marriage, she allegedly looked to alcohol to numb her pain. It surprised her agent Ruth Bowen, who told Ritz, she had a habit of getting loaded before a performance. In no way did that help her singing. Aretha was big on denial. She didn't want to hear that she had a drinking problem. It didn't matter how many falls she suffered, how many tickets she got, how many subpar performances she gave due to inebriation. Her talent protected her. Even drunk, she could sing better than 99 out of 100 singers. Most people couldn't tell anything was wrong. Aretha never publicly acknowledged her alleged battle with alcohol. While other public figures have garnered sympathy from fans by acknowledging their personal obstacles, that was not Aretha's style. She had a tough childhood, Ritz explained to People in 2018, shortly after the icon's death. And early on in her career, she was hit by the tabloids. There were stories of her being a victim of domestic violence, and she didn't like that. She didn't like the image of her being a beaten woman. She loved the blues, but she didn't want to be seen as a tragic blues figure.
My dad was not a person that had narrow-minded attitudes, and neither do I.
She faced another big tragedy, losing her father and ending her second marriage. These events shook her personal life while she continued to be a music legend. In 1979, after performing at a show in Las Vegas, Aretha got horrible news. Her father, C.L. Franklin, had been shot during a robbery at his home. Aretha rushed to the hospital, but by the time she arrived, her father was already in a coma. Sadly, he never woke up. He remained in that coma for 5 years before passing away on July 27, 1984. Losing her father was a heartbreaking time for Aretha because they were very close. He had also been a big influence on her music career. That same year, in 1984, Aretha's marriage to her second husband, Glyn Turman, officially ended. They had tied the knot in 1978, but their relationship was full of struggles. Turman was an actor, and it was hard for him to adjust to living in Aretha's shadow, since she was such a famous star. Rolling Stone magazine wrote that their marriage had already been tense before they separated in 1982, but the divorce still surprised many people. Aretha never spoke much about why their relationship ended. There's a popular rumor that Aretha caught Glyn cheating with someone she knew, which led her to end things quickly. But this has never been confirmed, and Aretha herself stayed quiet about the reasons for the divorce.
I have been married. I've been
You
married.
married 3 times, somebody.
Twice.
Oh, then good. Then maybe that's a lucky omen. Yeah, because they told me 3 times.
3 times? Is it better the 3rd time?
I would. Don't you think? As you get older, you know more.
I would think so, yes.
Aretha Franklin's relationships with her siblings were often fraught. Per Daily Mail, the star had a jealous streak, which some say manifested itself by holding back the careers of her sisters, Irma and Carolyn, 2 talented singers in their own right. And brother Cecil, who also became the singer's manager following her divorce from first husband Ted White, would regularly be on the receiving end of her sharp tongue. In David Ritz's biography, Respect the Life of Aretha Franklin, via Daily Mail, he's quoted as saying, "She takes her suffering and turns it into anger. It's all about diva drama. It's hard for her to deal with extreme sadness and loss." Sadly, the soul legend would lose all 3 siblings by the turn of the century, and all to different forms of the Big C. Carolyn died of breast cancer in April 1988, while Cecil passed away from the lung form at Christmas 1989. The eldest Franklin sibling Irma succumbed to throat cancer in September 2002, the same year that their half-brother Vaughn also lost his life.
We got all kind of music now that ain't got nothing to do with nothing except cars and money and glory. But she was about getting Angela Davis out of jail. She was about working with Martin Luther King Jr. and Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton.
Aretha used her music to fight for equality, especially for Black people and women. However, during her career, she was also under suspicion by the FBI. The FBI watched her closely for more than 40 years, from 1967 to 2007, because they believed she might have supported or even helped spark radical black movements. The FBI kept a huge file on her, which was recently made public by Rolling Stone. The file contains 270 pages of reports, some of which suggest that Franklin might have been involved with Black Power groups or that her performances could lead to violence. These claims were linked to her being friends with black leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other prominent activists. Many of these leaders were vocal about the struggles black people faced in the 1960s and 1970s. Despite all the FBI's concerns, they never found any solid evidence to support the idea that Aretha was doing anything wrong. One of the most surprising things in the FBI's report was how Aretha was involved in a big fight at one of her concerts. In 1968, she was supposed to perform at the famous Red Rocks Amphitheater in Denver, but there was a problem with the promoter not paying her up front, which was her strict rule. When she didn't show up, the fans became angry, and a 20-minute fight broke out. The FBI even reported that the fight caused about $10,000 in damage, which is about $85,000 today. Even though Aretha apologized to her fans and hoped they would get their money back, the FBI kept a close eye on her.
Aretha Franklin was a black woman who believed in black empowerment and who put her money on the line to do so. And so she was not afraid of the FBI or anybody else.
Another disturbing part of the FBI file reveals that Aretha and her family received death threats. In 1979, her brother Cyril Franklin received threatening phone calls from a person who claimed to be married to Aretha in the past. This person said they planned to kill Aretha and her family. The FBI file mentions that Aretha also got threatening calls, including one that said someone would blow up you and your family. To protect herself, Aretha hired a private investigator when she traveled to the East Coast. Even though the FBI spent years watching Aretha Franklin, they never found anything that proved she was involved in anything criminal. Her son, Cacalf Cunningham, said he wasn't sure if his mother even knew she was being watched by the FBI, but he knew that she had absolutely nothing to hide. Aretha Franklin's music and activism continue to inspire people all over the world, and the FBI's suspicions were never able to stop her from being a voice for justice and equality.
Even though the agency ultimately decided not to interview Aretha Franklin, they monitored her performances and appearances at events held by organizations that we have heard of, like the NAACP.
Another challenge Franklin faced was managing her money. Despite being very famous and wealthy, she had problems with paying her bills. In 2015, it was reported that she owed over $11,000 for a condo she owned in Michigan. The company that managed the condo tried to take the property from her because of unpaid bills. This wasn't the first time Franklin had money problems. In 1999, she had over 30 lawsuits filed against her because she owed nearly $1.2 million. She did pay some of her debts, but others were not paid on time. Franklin once said in a statement that most of her debts were paid, but she admitted that she had trouble with a few. Her lawyer, Judge Harvey Tenon, said Franklin had a hard time managing her money and should have had a team to help her. He understood why she didn't, though. He explained that people had taken advantage of her for many years. Aretha Franklin owed some serious money to the government. In December 2018, months after the music icon's passing, TMZ reported that Franklin owed more than $6.3 million in back taxes from 2012 through 2018, plus an additional $1.5 million in penalties to the Internal Revenue Service. Her former attorney told the outlet that Franklin had been audited several times within the 6-year period, despite the 2018 fiscal year not being over yet at the time of the report. Her estate's attorney claimed, however, that the IRS may have been using some fuzzy math and that the matter was being handled, noting that her estate had paid $3 million in back taxes. "We have a tax attorney. All of her returns have been filed," Attorney David Bennett told the Associated Press. "We have disputes with the IRS regarding what they claim was income. We claim it's double-dipping income because they don't understand how the business works." Bennett claimed that because Franklin incurred a lot of deductible business expenses from touring, including transportation, lodging, background singers, and musicians, that her debt was likely much smaller than the agency had estimated.
Aretha had the same thing.
Yeah, well.
She had a bad body image. She would order or have size 8s made for her when she was a
Bless
size
her
40.
heart.
God
That
bless
was
her.
legendary.
And I've seen many zipper busts on her on stage. But God bless her. You know.
But despite all her success, she often felt insecure about herself, worrying that she wasn't good enough as a singer, a woman, or even a mother. These insecurities sometimes made her feel jealous of other female singers like Diana Ross and Whitney Houston. In 1989, after recording a song with Whitney, Aretha made a comment that Whitney lacked maturity as an artist. It showed that even though Aretha loved Whitney, she still felt a need to defend her own place as the Queen of Soul. Aretha's health became a bigger issue in her later years. She struggled with her weight throughout her life, losing and gaining weight many times. She also had a history of smoking and drinking, which affected her health. Although she quit smoking in 1992, she admitted that quitting made her gain even more weight. In 2010, she had surgery for a tumor, but she made sure to tell her fans that it wasn't as serious as people thought. She even lost 85 pounds after the surgery, although she denied having any weight loss surgery. Even with all these challenges, Aretha kept performing. In 2011, she returned to the stage with a powerful performance in Chicago and went on several tours. However, her health problems forced her to cancel some shows in 2013. Despite facing serious health challenges, she remained hopeful and optimistic about her recovery. In an interview, she talked about experiencing a miraculous healing, but also understood that she needed to focus on her health before fully returning to the stage. Her passion for performing was strong, but her body was starting to show signs that it was time to slow down. In February 2017, Aretha had to make a hard choice. She announced that 2017 would be her last year of touring. Her health had taken a toll, and she knew she couldn't continue performing the way she used to. Still, she tried to schedule a few concerts for 2018, but her doctor advised against it, and she had to cancel them. It was a heartbreaking decision for her, but she had to put her well-being first. On August 13, 2018, news broke that Aretha was gravely ill. She was at her home in Detroit, surrounded by family and close friends. She was in hospice care, meaning doctors knew she was nearing the end of her life. Many famous people, including Stevie Wonder and Jesse Jackson, visited her during these difficult days. Despite all the love and support, Aretha passed away on August 16, 2018, at the age of 76. She died from a rare form of pancreatic cancer, which had been causing her pain for some time. Amidst all the tragedy in her life, Aretha Franklin is often called the Queen of Soul, was one of the greatest singers of all time. Rolling Stone magazine named her the best singer twice. Aretha was very successful. She sold over 75 million records worldwide and had 112 singles on the US Billboard charts. She had 17 top 10 pop singles and 20 #1 songs on the R&B charts. Throughout her career, Aretha received many awards. She won 18 Grammy Awards, including the first 8 for Best Female R&B Vocal Performance. She was also given the Grammy Living Legend Award and the Lifetime Achievement Award. Aretha was the first woman to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1987. She was also honored with the National Medal of Arts and the Presidential Medal of Freedom.